1776 was a turbulent year for Britain and America. The British colonists in North America felt extremely slighted over many unfair taxes imposed upon them by King George. The English felt that they had every right to tax the colonies without giving them representation, and that the colonists were only a passionate minority. 1776 was the year that the emotions on both sides boiled over. Spies had been used for centuries for gathering vital information on the enemy, but in a revolution which pitted a ragtag group of patriots against the greatest superpower of the 18th century, espionage was changed forever. During the American Revolution, patriotic spies fought a behind-doors war for the secrets of the British Empire. These founders of modern espionage utilized assets, including the courage of colonial citizens, the cunning of secret agents, and covert methods and tactics to successfully harvest information. The Culper Gang, or Sea-Tocket spies, gathered diplomatic secrets from the British-occupied New York and bravely ferried them to General Washington at great risk to themselves. This intelligence led to decisions in diplomacy which changed the fate of America in the face of spying. Hello, my name is Eric Briggs, and I'm here with the author of Washington Spies, Alexander Rose. Mr. Rose, who were the most influential American spies in the Revolution?
Hi Eric, this is Alex Rose here. In answer to your first question, well, I would say unhesitatingly the Culper Ring, which operated as George Washington's private spy ring or spy network in New York City and on Long Island and throughout Connecticut between mid-1778 and the end of the war in 1783. None of the operatives were ever caught. Many of their identities remained secret even until the 20th century, and they brought in a great deal of very useful information.
George Washington used civilians as agents because they could blend in with the populace. Washington did not like many soldier spies because some could not shake the telltale habits of perfect marching and saluting to superiors. When he discovered Hessians fighting with the British, he sent patriotic German Americans to spy on them. The Patriots needed to find new ways to pass along battle plans and letters without interception, so a new type of fighter was invented, the guerrilla warrior. Guerrillas are a mix of soldier, spy, and scout. They used their immense knowledge of the area, something the British didn't have, to launch sneak attacks on the enemy. Some were marksmen who hid in trees and purposely targeted and killed British officers to lower morale and cause chaos. Many were used as spies, scouting out information, disguising themselves as redcoats, and sneaking back to the wilderness with the enemy's plans. The guerrillas were devastating to the British forces because they could get away easily from the redcoats who didn't know the land. Some of Washington's most trusted spies were women. Women were most effective agents because they had barely ever been used as spies before. One was Anna Smith Strong, who signaled other Culper Gang members as she hung her laundry. Another was Lydia Darragh, who once alerted Washington to a British ambush at Valley Forge. Not all spies were successful. Major John Andre was the chief British intelligence officer during most of the Revolution. He was captured associating with the infamous Benedict Arnold, who tried unsuccessfully to sell the American stronghold of West Point. Arnold had been an American hero when he was a highly successful general who would help turn the tide of the Revolution with his victorious trouncing of the British at Saratoga. But his betrayal of his own cause and his fall from grace were brutal for him. The name Benedict Arnold was soiled in this act, and he remains the most infamous traitor in American history. Mr. Rose, who was the most important British spy in the Revolution?
I would say without question, absolutely, Benedict Arnold. Arnold was the third or fourth highest ranking American general and came within a hair's breadth of betraying West Point, which was the key to the entire Hudson River.
There were other times when American agents were not so lucky too. Nathan Hale volunteered for a scouting mission in New York, but was captured by the infamous British regulars. The first spy for America was hanged on September 21st, 1776. The leader of the great Culper Gang, and Washington's right-hand man for intelligence, was Colonel Benjamin Talmadge. Talmadge had been a trusted officer in the Continental Army for a while before becoming a spy master. Talmadge decided to head the Culper Gang in New York. He became the boss, who told other spies what to do. He was so efficient and well-liked, he became a U.S. representative after the war. Talmadge left a lasting impact on America's spying tactics by showing the way for America's spies with innovative new techniques, codes, and information transportation. He was also an innovator with his groundbreaking sympathetic stain. The man behind America and its spies was General George Washington. Soldiers said that they would desert if not for the leadership and grace of General Washington. Washington was always honorable and led by example. Washington himself was a spy during the French and Indian War. He strategically placed his spies in areas where there was a lot of British activity and soldiers. He also trained his spies to take on the guise of devout loyalists. His spies were so effective because he always instilled the highest confidence and gave his men very high morale. His men also gave him their respect, as John Clark addressed him as His Excellency's most obedient, humble servant. One of Washington's mobile spy masters was Major John Clark. Clark was constantly on the move. Throughout the war, he dispatched intelligence to Washington by a system of riders like the Pony Express. Clark had many spies under him, but not one of their identities is known to this day, which shows how secretive the spies were even then. The spies had secret methods that got their dispatches past the unwitting British agents. One of these techniques was a sympathetic stain, an early invisible ink. The stain's chemical, cobalt chloride, was found to have invisible ink properties by John Jay, who would later serve as a highly successful Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Codes were tantamount to spies because they allowed them to correspond without fear of interception by the English. The Culper Gang used many numerical cipher codes. For example, 711 represented Washington, and 723 represented Culper Jr., aka Robert Townsend, the member of the Culper Gang that collected the information in New York. This information, putting the wrong idea in the enemy's heads, successfully aided the Patriots regularly. When British General Howe had Washington on the run, a deserter named William de Monts saved the revolution by giving the British detailed plans of Fort Washington. This convinced them that the fort was more important than the general himself, allowing George to escape. An American agent posing as a loyalist butcher named John Honeyman gave the British false information that there would be no attack by the Americans while the British were in Trenton. Washington crossed the Delaware near Trenton, as immortalized in art, and victoriously trounced the English and Hessians camped there. What was the greatest victory won by intelligence in the Revolution?
I would argue that there is no single greatest victory, or even any kind of victory at all, using intelligence. In truth, you have to consider whether and to what extent information received by a general or government, for example, influenced their strategy over the short, medium, and long term. See, it's a little bit more complex than just saying intelligence won this, or intelligence won that. In that spies of various kinds, which also includes things like military scouts and cavalry operations to probe the enemy lines, they're spies too. Well, I mean, pretty much every battle the Americans were in, or the British for that matter, had spies involved somewhere. It's very difficult to point to the single or even the greatest victory of all. So I would say pretty much every battle was a battle between spies.
America's frontier in New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New England held witness to transactions of information, the likes of which the world had never seen. Diplomatic ideas, theories, and treaties were traded from the mouth of one patriot to another. Truly great compromises were solidified in the backwoods of colonial America. America's first spy master, George Washington, inspired generations with his inspiring actions and fresh ideas. As British officer George Beckwourth said, "The Americans did not outfight us, they simply outspied us."